Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and fellow Forest fan from across the Atlantic, Richard Sprague.
Yeah, let's do it for our country. Red, white, and blue. It's Uncle Sam who's asking, so your mother will approve.
Yes, we can still pull out those patriotic tunes from somewhere, wherever they may be. How are you doing, Richard?
I'm good. It's an adventure, man. I'm just like wondering. I got to get like a little bingo card of what songs is Greg going to throw out there, and that was not on it, by the way. But
I'm
yeah,
even
well
delving
done.
into Greece too now. I'm quite impressed
Oh
with
wow.
myself.
Okay, good job.
Now, when we launched Talking Reds, we said right from the off that we wanted to not only cover the men's team, but the club as a whole, its links in the community, the academy, and of course, the women's team. So, we are thrilled to welcome today's guest for an episode of The One With. She's full of knowledge on the women's game in general and a fan and commentator on Nottingham Forest Women as co-host of the brand new Nottingham Forest Women Fancast. Joining us for this special Forest Women special, please welcome Holly. Well, I can only introduce you with the anthem, Holly. How are you today?
Love it. Oh, absolutely love that. Yeah, no, I'm really good, Greg. Thank you. Really, really good. Thanks. And thanks for having me on.
No, you're welcome. I think we might have a slight delay on my mic coming through to you, so we'll try and work with that slightly. When we have any of our guests joining us, the first thing we want to know is about you and your Forest story. So just to kind of give our viewers and listeners a bit more information about you, how, why, where, when, who, what, how and when did you become a Forest fan and all that kind of stuff?
Okay, yeah, sure. So basically, take you back end of the 80s when I first got into football. And obviously the heady days of Brian Clough in the old First Division. I grew up in a little rural Nottinghamshire village called Collingham, which is just outside Newark for those that don't know. And at that time, you either supported Liverpool, obviously because they were riding high at that point, or the local team, which was Forest, because they were doing well and obviously under Brian Clough in the First Division. And yeah, basically, my brother first got me into them. Really, he started liking Forest. My dad was actually a West Ham fan, and my mum's side of the family were from Cleethorpes, so they were Grimsby Town. So I could have been either really, but chose Forest purely because of, our location. They were the big club in the First Division at the time. And I remember one of my first memories was watching the Littlewoods Cup final in 1989. Funny story, actually. I of all things, I had to go to a maypole dancing rehearsal, and I was watching it on telly with my brother, and we 1-0 down, I think, against Luton Town. And then I had to go to this rehearsal, and I was so annoyed. I just wanted to stay at home and watch it, and obviously came back and realised that we actually won the game, 3-1 in the end. But yeah, so that's my Forest story. I watched them in my favourite time watching it other than now was obviously during the 90s. What a great little era. I used to go quite a lot with my friend who had a season ticket, and I mean I've lived in London for the last 21 years, I think it is. So I've actually had a season ticket for 7 years, so I try to get up. Well, I get up to every home game that I can. Yeah, so yeah, been a Forest fan since I was little, really.
Fantastic. So, first and foremost, interest in Forest in terms of the men's team, because really that was the prominent factor, I guess, not just for Forest, but for football in the UK, in England. Women's football has been around for a while, but has never had the profile that it's got now. And we'll talk more about that profile and how it's developed as we go through the episode. But obviously, the men's game being the main draw for you, but the women's game has grown so much over the last 10 years, especially. So tell us about how you kind of crossed over. I mean, obviously, being a woman, it's perhaps an obvious and natural thing that you're going to take an interest in the women's game too. Stating the bare obvious, we are very good at that. So tell us about your kind of attraction to Forest Women as well, and how much is that on a par really with the men's team? Is it taken over fully, or you just view them 50-50? You know, you've got just as much love for one or the other. You see it as all the same thing. Talk to us about the women's angle, and how you also then decided to launch with Ollie the Forest Women's Fancast.
You know what? I love this question because I could talk about women's football all day. So you'll have to tell me to shut up.
No, not at all. No.
So I also just want to check that the connection's all right because it's a little bit.
Yeah, I think, as I said, there's a little bit of a. We can hear you. There's a little bit of a delay on you, I think, hearing us, but that's fine. You carry on. I'm going to be quiet.
Okay, perfect. So I mean, I used to play football as a kid. Absolutely loved playing football, but there wasn't a girls' team at the time where I grew up, and on television as well. There wasn't any role models. Women's football wasn't on telly, so naturally, it was all about men's football. I can't actually remember the first time I saw women's football on TV, to be honest with you. But my personal sort of journey into women's football, I think the first game I ever went to, live game, was probably about 10 years ago. And it was Arsenal against Chelsea. And I think it was in Woking, of all places. And there was the likes of Eni Aluko and Casey Stoney and players like that, and Kelly Smith playing for Arsenal. And it just kind of grew from there, really. But at that point, it was still fairly underground, if you like. It wasn't as big, obviously, as it is today. And I think it was the 2015 World Cup where I started to really, really get into it and follow the Lionesses. And they came third. They won a bronze at that tournament. And it was a real effort as well. It was a real labour of love because a lot of those games were on in sort of the early hours of the morning as well. I remember the Canada game, just watching it at like 1 o'clock in the morning, which we won, and it was a fantastic victory. So it was kind of from there, really. And from then on, in terms of the women's team, the Forest women's team, obviously naturally gravitated towards them, being a Forest fan, lifelong Forest fan myself. And at that point, being in London, it was also very difficult to get to games. But the first game that I ever went to was, I think it was the FA Cup game we played against Millwall away at Millwall. I think we lost 3-1. But it was just so lovely to see women turning out in the Garibaldi, and it really, caught my love of following Forest Women from that moment onwards. And I would say, I've been ever since. One of the pivotal moments for me, and I think for a lot of people, is the Lionesses' victory a couple of years ago in the Euros. I mean, I would put that up there as one of my favourite footballing memories, one of my most favourite footballing experiences, following them through their journey. I went to pretty much all of the games during that tournament, and there was a connection there which I felt that I never really, obviously I experienced it with the men's Forest team and I experienced it with the England men's team, but there was just something about that team that was just so special, and you felt like you were on this journey. And the fact that we knew that if we won that tournament, something miraculous was going to happen, a landmark moment was going to happen, and things were going to change, and it did. And looking back, I've got goosebumps even talking about it now, just how special that was. And something really changed for me after that game, after that final. I remember going to the celebration in Trafalgar Square the day after. Just want to say thank you to my boss at the time who allowed me to take the day off and go down to there, because it was absolutely wonderful. And I remember walking out at the end and got chatting to this old guy who, he must have been in late 70s, I would say 80s. And he was talking about how he'd watched the 1966 World Cup final and how he likened Alf Ramsey's team to Serena Wiegman's team, and the similarities in consistency in the team and how wonderful it was. And the fact that it connected with him, I don't know, it was really, really special. And I thought something's going to change now, and it has. It's completely changed. I mean, women's football has just gone on this insane trajectory since that day in this country. And I absolutely love that Forest are now getting involved in that. Marinakis has put in big investment in this team, essentially because we're in tier 3 of the women's football pyramid, for those that don't know. And the aim this season is pretty much to get promoted to the championship, to the women's championship. So that's the second tier of football. Kind of works sort of similar from there on in, like the men, and then ultimately the Women's Super League. So you have to win the league to get promoted. There's no playoff, there's no second place. You have to get promoted. So it's all or bust essentially this season. And we've bought really, really well. We've invested really, really well. We've bought a lot of players with a lot of experience. We've also got a lot of younger players as well. There's a really nice balance and a really nice mix. There's obviously a lot of thought and a lot of planning gone into the team. And we've hit the ground running this season. We've won 4 out of 4. We've scored 25 goals. We're sitting top of the league on 12 points at the moment. And at a time where there are, unfortunately, some teams that are not investing in their women's teams, or they've kind of been left behind a little bit. Forest being ambitious, but putting money into the team, and the sky's the limit, really. And this is a team to really, really be proud of. They're playing some fantastic, really attractive football, possession-based football. We've got a really, really ambitious, a young, dynamic manager in Carly Davis as well. This is her first full-time head coach role as well. So to put that into consideration, I think she's doing really, really well. This is her second season at Forest. And yeah, it's just a really, really exciting time to get involved with the women's team and playing at the City Ground as well. They're playing all of their games at the City Ground this season, which is just great to see. It's really, I feel really proud, really, really proud, because I've gone to watch a lot of the London teams in WSL. I've been to Chelsea, I've been to Arsenal, purely because I love women's football. I love watching these elite players. I love watching the Lionesses, especially. I love women's football. I'd watch any game, really. But to now have a Forest women's team that could potentially be up there playing Arsenal at the Emirates. I mean, I'm not getting too ahead of myself at the moment because obviously we're not there yet, but we have the potential. I mean, it's just really, really exciting. So, yeah, that's kind of my little potted history around women. I could talk more, but that's kind of it.
I'm going to bring Richard in just a second, but before I do that, I did pop up the tier system for the women's game as you were talking, because you mentioned that Forest are currently in the 3rd tier. So just to clarify for those that aren't aware and those listening, that is the FA Women's National League Northern Premier Division. And as you state, Holly, to get out of that division, you've got to win the league, right? So the next step up for Forest Women would be tier 2. That's the FA Women's Championship. And then the real target, the real ambition would be to get out of the championship into the FA Women's Super League. Holly, do you need to win the Women's Championship to get up? What's the promotion like to get into the WSL from the Championship?
Yeah, it's the same. At the moment, it's the same. There's only one team goes up.
Just one spot. Just one spot. That's it.
Yeah. So basically, Palace last year have gone up to the WSL this season, and Bristol City have come down. I mean, I think we need to start having more teams in the leagues. Really, make a little bit more scope for promotion. But we'll get there. We'll get there. It's still early days. And I mean, talking to the Women's Championship, there's been a lot of investment in that this season as well. The gap between the WSL and the Championship is definitely going to be closing this season. The likes of London City Lionesses have been bought out by the lady that owns the Washington Spirit, I think it is in America. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's put in a lot of investment as well, and they've bought in. There's a Swedish player called Slani, she's a Swedish international, and she's joined the London City Lionesses, which is a massive coup for them. You've got the likes of Newcastle, who won our league last season. They did similar to Forest. They put a huge investment into their women's team. They got promoted, and they're now in the Women's Championship. So it's going to be a really exciting championship as well this season, I think.
So
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to finish off by just saying that the tier system does go lower. There's 4, 5, 6, and 7. So all the way down now, there seems to be a proper progression that's available from county level all the way through the tiers. I think maybe they need to sort the promotion out a little bit more to maybe try and get more teams up and down. But the women's game has certainly developed a huge amount in this country. But it's always been big in the US, hasn't it, Richard?
Yeah, it has, and I think by virtue of them winning, I think it's 4 World Cups at this point. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic because football in the U.S. has not really been as lauded, right? But with the women's game, it's almost kind of had the opposite sort of approach in terms of the way that it's grown in the UK, because the game in and of itself got attention because of the women versus the game getting attention because of the men. Which I think is really interesting. And now it's expanded to having a professional league in the U.S. as well for the women, like you mentioned, the Washington Spirit. MLS is starting to progress as well in terms of talent level and then just notoriety. So do you think, like in this country, Holly, how do they grow it even more? Like you said, there was an acceleration of interest and engagement because of the Lioness's success. So how does that work now? Is it sort of just general organic growth? Is it a more of sort of a grassroots get in the community, like I know Marinakis wants to do, increase the community involvement in sport, especially with girls? So how does that work, do you think, to make it even more of an interest in the UK? Maybe that's a loaded question.
No, that's a really good question. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of it does come down to money. Just putting the investment in. I mean, as we've seen, the disparity in our league is quite stark between those that have invested, those that have gone full time, and those that haven't, purely in the score lines that we've had recently. And unfortunately, people can say, well, does that lessen the football? There's not much of competition going on there, which is true, but it just shows you, if you don't invest in your team, don't invest in your women's team, unfortunately there's others that are going to, and they're just going to leapfrog everybody else, unfortunately. So yeah, I do think it comes down to money. There's a lot of Premier League teams that don't really invest in their women's team. I mean, it's not a given that you should, but why not? It's the biggest growing industry at the moment in sport, one of the biggest growing industries in sport at the moment. So it makes logical and financial sense to invest in your women's team. I mean, the likes of Arsenal are selling out the Emirates now. They're selling 60,000 tickets.
It's amazing.
Which is absolutely incredible. Like I said, I remember going to watch them at Woking. It was literally like, no disrespect, but like standing in a field. It was just, it must have been less than 1,000 people, possibly, but around the 1,000 mark. And to go from there to selling out the Emirates and it being a spectacle, being an event, being entertained. It is a pinch me moment looking around and just seeing, and the demographic as well. It's not just women, and it's not just young girls. It's young boys, it's teenage boys, it's men, it's women, it's old, it's young, it's everybody, and it's just wonderful to see. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it will come down to money, and having to remain accessible as well, for everybody. I mean, the US have always, as you say, they've completely led the way in terms of women's football. I mean, the likes of Kelly Smith, who used to play for Arsenal, and Karen Carney and Alex Scott and players like that used to have to go over to the US to be able to earn a living from playing football. And now we can offer that over here. And I just mentioned this on the pod recently that there's a player that we've signed, an Irish player called Casey Howe. She's come over and she's signed her first professional contract in this country. And Forest can do that. And Forest can attract someone like that over and actually pay them a wage. And that's really lovely. That's really heartwarming that we're now at that point where we can do that. But I also like the kind of symmetry as well of Emma Hayes going over to the US. The fact that, before it was a case of the US leading the way. The US have got the best coaches. They've got the best provision. They've got, all the investment and everything. They've got the whole setup. And now it's turned on its head. And now they want an English coach over there, who I think personally is the greatest women's coach that's ever, ever coached personally. I think she's absolutely phenomenal. Her record goes without saying, and she's deserved to go over there. She's got it on merit, and she's a great character, and I love a character in football. And she's a big, she was a big Clough fan as well. If you didn't know about that as well, look that up because yeah, her dad used to take her to games. I think. Do you know what? I'm not actually sure. I've read so many things about who she supports. Sorry to go on a tangent here, but apparently she supported Tottenham. But I'm not entirely sure whether that's correct. But going back to the Cloughy point, that she saw him as a role model and someone that she looked up to, and she's obviously taken that into her coaching. But yeah, to answer your question, it is just purely, I think, an investment and the right marketing as well. I mean, Arsenal have totally got that spot on as well. Get the marketing right, you have the investment, then the sky's the limit, I think.
Just want to jump into the comments. Joe Chama says, greetings, Holly. So we've got a few people watching. Wolfie from Forest Fan TV is watching as well, as is Bruce. How you doing, Bruce? Raf, a regular contributor to our team. So happy to have Holly on. Really love the one club approach. Men's team, women's team, Academy B teams. Brilliant. We couldn't agree more. That's what we really want to try and achieve. And of course, your sidekick Ollie, he's jumped into the comments as well. There needs to be an expansion. The season can be over for most teams after 3 or 4 games, say for a cup run. That's going back to the promotion aspect of women's football at the moment. So yeah, I mean, the US definitely has led the way in terms of women's football with Emma Hayes over there now. She spoke this week about how she sees herself in the pinnacle job as far as women's football goes. In women's football, there isn't a bigger job than the US women's national team manager role. So she's reached that pinnacle. And as you say, for them to come to us, to pull up an English person, an English woman to take over, is a real achievement, isn't it? Not just for her, but perhaps for our coaching and our development as a whole. So just want to slip back into the second part of the last question, and when we're really going to kind of get your thoughts on and your how you and Ollie came up with the idea to launch the Women's Fancast, because I've been listening to every episode. I think it's great, and I'm not just paying lip service to you because you're sat in the guest chair. It genuinely is a real eye opener because it's informative. It's really good content, but it's concise as well. I think you're doing about 30 minutes per episode, there or thereabouts. The knowledge level from you and Ollie is phenomenal, and that in itself makes it a good listen because it feels like it's all this information is just flowing out of you guys. You're not looking at notes. I mean, obviously you're not on camera, but you can just tell you might have a few notes here and there, but it's just stuff that you guys are putting out, and it's such an easy, good listen. And I'm now paying more attention myself to the women's team, and you just find yourself, okay, I want to go and see what the women's team are doing, and I'm Sophie Domingo, I know her name, and there's other names as well that are now becoming more and more synonymous as well. So how did you two get together to launch this Women's Fancast? Tell us everything.
You know what? Thanks, Greg. That's really lovely to hear, because that was our aim at the end of the day. So saw a gap in the market. The fact that the women, there's bits and pieces of content out there, but they didn't have a pod solely devoted to them. And they deserve it. Absolutely deserve to have their own pod. And obviously at this moment in time, when we learned about the investment, we learned about the team playing at the City Ground, it all came together, and it just felt like a really good time to launch the women's only pod. And it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I've done bits and pieces on various pods here and there, and I love doing it, but I absolutely love talking about women's football, and I really wanted to launch this project. And I met Ollie on Twitter. He is an absolute diehard Forest Women's fan. I literally, any stat that you need, Ollie will have it. He's an absolute statsman, and he's a fantastic guy. And I knew his passion was exactly what I wanted as part of the pod. I wanted us to both kind of come together and just share that passion, and as well as talk about the team, but educate people and be fun. And be snappy and just not to kind of patronize anybody about the game, but do it in a gentle way to kind of educate and get people on board and really try and promote the team, because I think it's a fantastic time to get involved in the team, and we just wanted that to come across. So it's really nice that you've experienced that, and that you've enjoyed the episodes, and you've got a lot from it. So yeah, I approached Ollie and he was absolutely chuffed to bits, really excited to get involved, and yeah, it just kind of went from there really. And a lot of work does go into the episodes, because we really pride ourselves in getting the stats right, and really doing the girls a service basically. We want to be accurate, and we want to be, I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but just kind of respect them, and give them the respect that they deserve. So yeah, and I love it. I actually love doing the pod. It's really really good fun, and obviously at the moment when we're doing so well, it's just great to talk about every week. And we also like to talk a little bit about other kind of interlinking things
Sure.
in women's football as well, how a little bit's kind of interlink and not necessarily just about the women's team. But yeah, we do try and keep it fairly succinct and snappy and to the point. And yeah, it's done really well, and yeah, really enjoying it. And we're hoping to get a few sort of specials in place. So some interviews, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the pipeline with either some of the players or the coaching team, and other people as well of interest that I'm hoping to do some specials in the future as well. So watch this space.
Yeah, I was curious that, because the podcast thing can be very much a community sort of thing, like Greg will attest, Raf, others that we've been able to connect with Forest Focus and others, Forest Fan TV. So have you found the same thing? Have you been able to kind of make connections with other fan casts and sort of delve into that community sort of connection, so you are all kind of working together kind of in tandem to kind of help be an advocate for it? Because I know you're very passionate about building the interest in the women's game overall. So curious about that.
Yeah, no, we've had a few people reach out, and I think that's really, really nice. Just to say, I don't think there is enough women's voices on a lot of the podcasts. That's just my own personal opinion. So I think it's really nice when guys like yourselves do give the women's team a voice. And there's many wonderful podcasts out there, and people have reached out, and I'm absolutely so grateful that they want to chat to us and they want to kind of promote the pod, and they've said lovely things about the pod, which is fantastic. So that's what I love about Forest. There's such a community. I mean, I know people say that about their club, but there really, really is in Forest. And I've met so many great people through Twitter, through the podcast community, through traveling up to the men's home games on the train from London every week. It's just, and they have become like family, and that kind of filters through to the podcast community as well. And I think everybody just wants to elevate each other and support each other, and it's really, really lovely to see. And thank you guys for letting me come on and chat as well, and being interested in the women's team as well, because
not at all.
not
I mean, and
everybody
in fact,
is, so.
no. Well, the thing is, aside from it, you being a Forest women's football expert, I think, we were talking. Look, we want to have more female voices. Well, we want to have more female. Definitely. Yeah, we want to have more female voices on Talking Reds, because, God, I know it sounds so cheesy, but Brian Clough said it. Football's for everyone. It's for everybody to get involved in, and Forest has got a huge community. So you are our first woman to come on to Talking Reds. We're thrilled about that. You're the first female voice we've had on, and it's something we've tried. But be honest with you, we've asked a couple of other people along the way, and it's not for everyone. Coming onto a pod and being on screen or being on the microphone, it's not for everybody, and that's absolutely to be respected, and we absolutely do that. So we're thrilled you're here, and the stuff that we're learning from you is great. And there's a few questions in the comments that we're going to get to in a moment. I mean, I've got a list of stuff here, so. Moving back onto the actual women's team, I've got a few questions I'm going to chuck at you, and you've kind of touched on some of them already, but maybe you can sort of develop that a bit more. So things like, how important is it now that the women are playing at the City Ground? I think that's something that I will say is huge. I think it's brilliant. Now that they've gone full-time professional, that shows Marinakis' ambition is not just limited to the men's team. I mean, he's proven that with his investment in the women's team, the netball team, and this is a guy with big ideas. So the City Ground playing there, how much of a factor going full-time professional is that going to really develop the Forest women? And also, I'd like to know, has there been any resistance that you can recognise or think of from any corners of the community to the inclusion of the women's team in the club as a whole? Because, you know, there may be some dissenting voices out there. Hopefully, the fewer the better. If none would be great. But have you noticed, has there been any resistance on the integration of the women's team?
So, in terms of your first question, I think it's absolutely massive. It's fantastic that we're now playing at the City Ground. I mean, for me personally as well, and I think, well, for a lot of people, it's the accessibility piece. I can get to the City Ground so much easier than going out to Grange Park. So I can get on a train and I can get off at Nottingham and I can go to the ground and watch the women's team now, which is so much easier. And I think it's going to be similar for a lot of people. So having it at the City Ground is really good in terms of accessibility. I think it shows an element of professionalism. It shows respect. It shows that one club mentality, which I think is a really important piece. It's treating them like professionals. It's treating them like athletes. And you know, it's just a great pitch. It's a great ground. We love it, don't we? We love the City Ground. It's a great place to play a football match. And you know, you've got the facilities are so much better than, you know, playing at Grange. As much as I respect Grange Park completely, it's a stage, isn't it? It's a professional stage at the City Ground, and I think it's really important that that he's made that move to do that. And in terms of pushback, personally, I've not seen anything, which is actually really refreshing. I've only seen really positive stuff online and people generally talking. You know, I've had a few people come up and say, "Oh yeah, the women's team, they're going professional now. What does that mean?" And they're really excited about it, and they want to get involved and they want to get down when they can. And you know, I'll take my lad, my daughter, you know, my kids, and it's also really good because obviously not everybody can get tickets to the Premier League men's games now, unfortunately. So it's a great chance to get down, enjoy the match day, enjoy the City Ground, to get to actually just see the spectacle of what it is, and watch some fantastic football. But no, I've not really seen any real negativity. I think the only negativity that I've seen is a little bit around, you know, the golfing class and the sort of disparity in scorelines and stuff that we've seen, like the 9-0, the 7-0, that it's not a real game of football, and there's no competition there, and it demeans the league and tra la la la. Which again, we've kind of covered this a lot on the pod, that unfortunately that's where we're at the moment, and there will be teams that are going to be tanking each other, you know, 9-0 or whatever. Forest are going to be, you know, beating teams quite convincingly, but that's the only negative stuff that I've seen. I think at the moment, just the way the women's game has gone, most people are on board. Most people are positive about it. You don't have to like women's football, you know. Like, I don't particularly like golf. I don't like motor racing, but you know, it is a great time to get involved. And yeah, I've not seen any real negativity, which is really good. It's a really positive thing.
That is great, but I've seen stuff on Twitter, not about the Forest women, but there is stuff around. I mean, Twitter's a cesspit, right? We know that it's a human zoo. So you see things from prominent people sometimes talking about women's football and women commentators. So how much work is still to be done to break down those stereotypes and male ignorance and misogyny? Feels to me that there is a little bit of work still to be done. And you talk about those scorelines, those 9-0 thrashings of Stourbridge last Sunday, and you know, some negative comments think that adds fuel to the argument that the standard and differences between men's football and women's football is still some way to go. So on a wider scale, not just the Forest women story, but the wider scale of women's football, how much work do you still think needs to be done to break down that misogyny?
Yeah, I mean, that is a different piece, isn't it? Around the female commentator thing. Oh gosh, I made a point probably about 3 or 4 years ago where I just don't read the comment section if there's been a post on a let's just say on the BBC or Match of the Day or whatever, like one of the predominant men's teams accounts, and they've posted something about a female player or something to do with a female. I just don't read the comments anymore because it still exists, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no point getting down into that negative rabbit hole. But yeah, we do need to change attitudes. We do. Women have as much right to be in football as men do. It's as simple as that, and we're not going away. So you either get on board with it or you go elsewhere, because we're here, and there's some exceptionally talented female pundits, female commentators, presenters in the business, and we should really be supporting them and not putting them down, because it doesn't do anybody any help to do that. But yeah, Twitter's the worst for it. It is the worst for that.
Yeah.
But I personally just try and tend to ignore it, because it'll always be there. And I have got in the past, I've got into ridiculous arguments with people about female players, female pundits, and that people saying stuff like, "Oh, if the Women's World Cup was played outside my front window, I'll close the curtains," and all this kind of stuff. And it's just, okay, fine, that's your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. Just scroll on. If you don't like it, scroll on by, go and look at something that you do like. And that's what I do personally. There's just no room for negativity now. And maybe there's an element of jealousy there, because women's football in general is doing so well, and a lot of people really, really enjoy it now. And it's so obvious to see. You wouldn't have 60,000 people at the Emirates if they didn't like women's football. Selling out Wembley, selling out. I don't know whether they're on course to, but the last few times that the Lionesses have played at Wembley, they've sold out. Obviously, sold out the final of the Euros. There's a couple of games coming up against USA and Germany at Wembley. I would imagine they're probably going to be close to selling out. That's going to be a great spectacle. Emma Hayes coming back to manage the US team against Serena Winkman's England team.
That'd be something.
Back in Wembley, back in North London. I mean, I'm going. I can't wait for that. Actually, it's going to be fantastic. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Sorry, I do like to go on a bit of a tangent.
It's great. No, it's fantastic. Yeah. Well, and does seem to be a positivity around the team. I mean, obviously they're responding to that, right? And yeah, you're right. You can't criticize them for being really talented and playing to the best of their capability in a league, even if it seems like there's not as much talent top to bottom in that league. So yeah, that seems silly to criticize that. It's like, that's what they should be doing. If they've brought in the players that they should, they're progressing as they should, got a good manager, all of that, the backing from the ownership. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what's the point of criticizing that? It's like, that's exactly what we want to see.
What are they expected to do? What, tie one leg together?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
They're only going to play 8. They're only going to play 8 people on the pitch. I mean, what are the, yeah, it's crazy.
Oliver,
do they expect them, to give? Sorry, go on.
No, I beg your pardon. I was just going to put the comment on that Oliver has put out, saying that the difference isn't the quality between women and men, it's between the teams who invest and the teams who can and do. Wolves are probably richer than us, and their players play for expenses. So that's on the women's side of things. So obviously there's a difference in funding and money between the women's game and the men's game, but also within the women's game, there's also a difference in terms of level of investment in solely the women's teams, as you were talking about earlier. And when you see Forest women sitting at the top of the table, and I've put the table on the screen for those that are watching, I'd prefer that we were called Nottingham Forest, but okay, we're being called Nottingham on the table.
Yeah, that's me too, actually.
Yeah, but 4 wins out of 4, a goal difference of plus 24, 12 points. I mean, this team looks as though it's going to get promoted this season. It's like an express train. Now that Marinakis has invested, and Raf's asking as well, Holly, can you give us a lowdown on who are the key signings, into which positions and why they are key? There's loads of signings in. Marinakis is supercharging and building the team in a similar way to the men's team. Just quickly as well, before you answer that question, we signed Jessica Hennessy in the last 24 hours. She's a 22-year-old centre-back I think she's come over from Shamrock Rovers. I of course know nothing about her at all, but there's a few outgoings that have been mentioned recently, but another incoming. So yeah, lots of signings, Holly. Raf's asking who are the important ones. Tell us what you can.
Yeah, so we had Mel Johnson, who came from Charlton. She was, I think she won. What was it that she won? She won one of the. She scored. She had loads of goals in the Championship, which is exactly where we want to be. She's got loads of experience. Who else? Kate Longhurst, who played for. Well, she's played for loads of different clubs. She played in the WSL for Liverpool, and they won it when they won it in 2 consecutive seasons. Most recently played for West Ham. She's kind of like, I would describe her as sort of like a Ryan Yates Sangare type if you're looking at the comparisons to the men's team. A bit of a bulldozer in midfield, but incredibly skillful at the same time. Got bags and bags of experience. Very, very experienced player. Charlie Wellings as well, who plays just behind the striker, what be that Mel Johnson or Bridget Galloway or whoever's starting. She again a highly experienced player. She scored for Birmingham City in the Women's Wembley FA Cup final. I think it was in 2017. She also played for Celtic. Yeah, again, loads and loads of experience. And this is the thing, we've got these players with the experience from the league that we essentially want to get promoted into. And yeah, a really nice mix. Sophie Domingo, I don't know whether you wanted to talk about her later, but she's someone that we've had on the books for a couple of seasons. She actually came from Derby, and if anybody wants to get down to the sixth ground and watch the women's team, she's someone that you should definitely keep an eye on. She's just a beautiful player, fantastically skillful player. Really, really great to watch. Reminds me a little bit of Brennan Johnson, actually. Just her kind of the way she carries the ball and her drive, and because she's not the biggest of players, kind of like Brennan is or was when he played for us, but she's a fantastic finisher as well. So yeah, they would be my picks. I think Cara Hamilton as well, at right back, fantastic, another Irish player, fantastic player, fantastic addition. I'm just trying to think who else we signed this season. Yeah, there's a few a lot of youth players as well, very young players that we've signed for the future as well. And I think that's what's really important, is that we've got a nice balance between youth and experience, and a lot of players that are going to be really fired up to get on the pitch as well and prove what they can do and sort of play for the shirt, which is exactly what we want. I don't think we've had a massive amount of depth in the last few seasons, so it's really nice. A bit like the men, that we do have more squad depth now, so we have people that can come on and change the game should we need it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we're going to move things on because we've got a little bit more to get through, but before we do that, I noticed on the Forest Women Fancast account this morning, just before we came on, that you had put out your team for the Burnley game. So I've nicked it and I've put it on the screen. I think Ollie put this together, I think I noticed. So I'll read it out quickly. Emily Batty in goal, Nat Johnson left back, Cara Hamilton right back, a centre-back pairing of Molly Green and Lindsay Harkin, Kate Longhurst in the middle of the park with Freya Thomas, Holly Manders, looking like she's playing in the Gibbs White role there. Sophie Domingo, player of the month, I believe, for the women's team, announced in the last 24 hours. Charlie Wellings on the right with Mel Johnson up top. Now, I am still learning about the women's team, but the names that are standing out to me, Sophie Domingo, definitely. Kate Longhurst, I think she is someone who I'd heard of before she came to Forest. But the one player as well that I want you to talk about the team and briefly give us an idea of how they're going to play and how what you think the score will be. But at the same time as doing that, if you don't mind, Holly, just give us a word on Lindsay Harkin, club captain, over 300 games now for Forest. You got Guard of Honour last weekend, which was amazing. So tell us what you can about her and this team.
So Lino, as she's affectionately known, 300 300 appearances for Forest. She's a born and bred Forest family, and herself are all Forest fans. She started at Forest, I think it was 2005, and then she had a brief period where she played for Doncaster Rovers, and she actually played in the Women's Super League alongside a keeper that you may have heard of in Mary Earps. And then she came back to Forest. Has been with her ever since. I mean, she's just Forest through and through. She bleeds Forest. She's very cool, calm, collected defender. She's very professional, and I love the fact that she's still with us and she's still part of this team that hopefully will, fingers crossed, get promoted. Because she's been there, she's done it. She's got the shirt. She also played for England at youth level, under 19s as well. So she's got that experience. She's just Forest through and through. She's absolutely one of our own, and it was so lovely to see her get the recognition that she deserved on Sunday with the Guard of Honour. I thought that was a lovely touch by Forest to do that, especially with her family as well. She's got 2 boys, and her husband was there. So she balances obviously being a mother with being a footballer as well, which I think is obviously a very difficult task, and she does it really well. She's maintained a career in football alongside being a mother, so I think she's a real role model for young kids as well, I think.
So I had a question about Nat Johnson. So you made a really interesting comment during one of your podcasts about her being somewhat akin to Stuart Pearce, which of course most of the people that we brought on and we've done the lightning round with, virtually every time their favorite player, Forest player of all time, is Stuart Pearce. So what about her game and her personality kind of makes you think she's similar to Pearce?
Maybe that was a slight stretch, to be honest with you. But, I think because I'll be honest with you, I wanted to get my love of Stuart Pearce in there somehow because he's my favourite player of all time, which we'll come on to. I don't think there's direct comparisons, but there's a tenacity, there's a strength and a skill about her, and she's a real character as well. And she scores absolute worldies, which was obviously in Pearce's locker. Not necessarily free kicks. Well, she does have that as well. I mean, Molly Green's really become our free kick taker, but obviously she plays left back, and I just think she's got just a character about her that kind of slightly reminds me of Pearce. But I mean, there was only ever one Pearce, wasn't there? Fortunately. But that's kind of. I just wanted to get him in. I wanted to get a nod to Stuart in there because whenever I can, I try to.
Absolutely, yeah. I think she had goal of the season last year, right? Was that right?
Yeah.
She's amazing.
An absolute worldie. We've got this whole thing that she only scores bangers. As a left back, which is fantastic. I mean, that's what's so great about this team is that there's goal scorers across the entire team as well. We're not just solely relying on our forwards for the goals.
Absolutely. The scoring bangers at the moment, left, right, and centre. Whenever I've seen the clips,
right.
I mean, the one that went top bins, that she dragged it inside and just pulled it into top bins. Probably, to be honest with you, she should have probably won the Goal of the Month award. She was in there, but Jota Silva predictably was voted, and it was a great goal. It was his debut, but her goal was just sublime. I can't remember who it was. Who am I talking about? Was that Holly?
It's Molly Green.
Yeah.
Molly Green. I beg your pardon, Molly Green. So, and she's a centre back. I mean, blimey, it's like, it's unbelievable. So, just quickly sum up for us, how are we going to get on a Sunday against Burnley, Holly?
Well, that's the question. Tough test, very tough test. They're currently third. They've always been a promotion rival team alongside Wolves for us. They lost at the weekend. They did actually lose 1-0 to Wolves. But as Carly said in her pre-match, a wounded animal is probably the one that you've got to be most fearful of. They're going to want to come and they're going to want to match us toe to toe, and prove a point, I think. So I am quietly confident. I don't think it's going to be. It's absolutely not going to be another, 9-0, 7-0, anything like that. So you're not going to be seeing anything along those lines. I think it's going to be quite tight. But I think our quality and our depth will shine through again. And believe me, Carly will have us well drilled for this game. They all know the significance of this game. I think it's one of those games that if we win and we win well, I think, not we're there, there's still many, many games to go, obviously, in the season, but it's a really, really marker for where we are. Tight, I reckon. I think there's going to be maybe only a couple of goals in it. But I'd really like to see Emily Batty keep a clean sheet because she's done so well so far. So yeah, I'm thinking around about maybe a 3-1. I still think we'll score a few goals, but it's going to be tight.
Fantastic. So we'll be keeping our eye on the women at home on Sunday. Get yourselves down to the City Ground. Tickets are priced from just £6. I mean, genuinely, if I was in Nottingham, I'd go. I'd take my son and would have a day out at the City Ground and watch the women's team. And them playing at the City Ground now is, in my opinion, massive because it is a hub. It is a place that people can get to easier. So get yourselves down, support the women as well at the City Ground on Sunday if you can. Right. So we ask everybody who comes on to Talking Reds and sits in the hot seat to come up with their personal all-time favourite Nottingham Forest 11. And we've asked Holly to do the same. And this time, I'm thrilled that you decided to do it with a little bit of a difference. So this is Holly's Hybrid Reds. We've got some women in with the men, and it's brilliant. I'll quickly read it out, Holly. I'm going to ask you to give us just a few ideas on a few different players as to why they're in your team. So in goal, you've gone for the greatest women's goalkeeper that's ever lived, Mary Earps, one of our own. She's taken that number 1 shirt, and it's absolutely fantastic that she's in your team. Left back, Stuart Pearce. A centre back pairing of Joe Worrell and Lindsay Harkin. Right back at Eric Lehigh. We haven't seen him in a team before, so that's interesting. A midfield of, I beg your pardon, just holding the midfield at the bottom, Charlotte Steggles, I beg your pardon. Andy Reid on the left, Stevie Stunn on the right. A midfield of Paul McGregor and Lewis McGugan, and Stan Collymore up front. So 3 women in your team. Take us through some of those positions, Holly.
Yeah, so I thought, but yeah, it'd be a nice twist to kind of have a hybrid men's and women's team together there. Now, it's not necessarily picked on, the greatest players in terms of skill. I've gone for players that just have a certain character about them that I guess you'd say they sort of have a cult status in my Forest sort of world over the years. I've also gone for players that are within my lifetime as well that I've actually seen play. So Mary Earps, goes without saying. I'm so pleased that she's from Nottingham. I'm so proud that she's from Nottingham. I'm so proud that we've got a women's player from Nottingham that's got a mural when you come out of the station. I think it's absolutely fantastic. She grew up in West Bridgford, and she played for Forest 2010 to 2011, I believe. And I couldn't not have her. I could not have her in our team, in my team. She's definitely one of my favourite players of all time, and one of my current favourite players as well for the Lionesses.
Do you think we might get her back at one point?
I've got a little pipe dream that maybe she might end her career at Forest. How lovely would that be? Because, I mean, how old is she now? She must be, I think she's about 31, 32, something like that. Obviously, she's playing for PSG. She's living her dream, her Champions League dream with PSG, which is fantastic to see. But there will come a point where hopefully she'll want to come home and she'll want to end her career with us. I mean, that'd be so lovely. I mean,
she's 31. She's 31. She's just I just Googled it for you. Listen, if we can get up into the Championship or beyond, she wins the Champions League with PSG, then it would be a great story that she says, you know what, I'm going to have a couple more years. I'm going to go home, live in West Bridgford and play for Forest. That's what we want.
Absolutely. So Lindsay Harkin, goes without saying. She is both male and female teams, one of my most favourite players of all time, I think. She actually played with Mary at Donny Rovers for a short period of time as well. I think it was, between 2010 and 2015 when they're in the Women's Super League. So they kind of had that connection from before. Joe Worrell, I mean, again, these players aren't necessarily, the greatest in terms of skill, but I just love Joe. I'm still really, really upset that he's gone. Born and bred in Hucknall. So many reasons, like that little interview he did when he was really young, came out, and well, I think we'd played Wolves at home, I think it was, and we were just dying on our asses. I can't remember who was manager at the time. It might have been Aitor Karanka, I think. I can't remember, but and he came out and he just did a really, really frank, honest interview. I don't know whether you guys remember that, but he,
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
time when he was really, really young, I don't know, you could just tell there was something about him, and that's what I love. That's what I love in my footballers, when they've got a bit of character and a bit something about them as well. He was obviously really loyal to us at a time when we were really poor, and yeah, captaining us back to the Premier League, the header against Leicester went on the floor. You know, there's many reasons why I love Joe Worrell, and I think he'll always be a club legend to me and to a lot of people. Yeah, Eric Lehigh, similar kind of thing. Again, not the greatest ever right back, but full of character, full of charisma. I think he had a genuine joy for playing for Forest. He always looked like he really enjoyed putting on the Garibaldi, and he gave his all. And that first goal celebration where he put his the shirt over his head and he ran the entire pitch, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
Just another one of football's characters, and I just love that about him. And again, a real loyal servant to the club at a time when we really weren't particularly great. So I think I always like to give a nod to those players around that time when things are quite difficult, and they were, really, really loyal to us. And who else have I got on there? Charlotte Stegel. So she, and again, another massive character. She is, I believe, a Forest fan. Well, her family were born and bred Forest fans. She's currently at Derby, actually. She went to Derby at the end of last season. Fierce in the tackle. Do you know what? Actually, she has more likings to Stuart Pearce, going back to the Stuart Pearce question earlier, because
Nice.
she had an absolutely superb free kick as well, and very, very Pearce-esque. So, yeah, I could not put her in. I thought she was a fantastic player for us. Again, another real character. Unfortunately, couldn't commit. Sounds like she couldn't commit to the professional contract, and she's actually gone to Derby. So a bit of a shame, really, that she ended up, over the other side of the A52. But yeah, a real character for us. Stuart Pearce. Where do you start, right?
Legend.
Enough said.
He's just
Yep.
an absolute legend. Yeah, I'd say he's probably my favorite Forest player of all time, possibly my favorite footballer of all time. Personal memories of when I first would go to Forest, sitting in Upper Clough and watching him come out and do his fist pump to the Trent end, goosebumps on the back of your neck. Euro 96, the first player I fell in love with. He was just incredible, wasn't he? Absolutely incredible. So
Best
he's got to
nickname
be
of
in
all
there.
time.
What was that? Sorry.
Best nickname of all time.
Yes, exactly. What a psycho! I mean, come on,
I know.
it's brilliant.
Amazing.
Absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic. Just
Sorry,
give
go
us another. Just give us an idea. I need to get us moving on slightly. I don't want to kind of cut you short, but one name that stood out to
No,
me
that's
was
fine.
Paul McGregor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, kind of like I guess you would say sort of like a cult hero. Yeah, I chose him because he just sums up everything I loved about the 90s when I was really, really into my football, really into going to Forest, and the whole music scene, the Britpop scene. Obviously, he's known as the Britpop footballer, isn't he? His goal against Lyon. He was just someone that I just loved and just kind of summed up the era. Again, arguably, was he one of the or a better player? Possibly not, but for me, he was just a character, and that's what I've picked these players on. Someone that meant something to me at a certain time in my life, being a Forest fan.
Fantastic. Well, we say it to everybody that comes on. There are no wrong answers when it comes to you selecting your team. It is personal choice. It's personal stories. It's personal memories. It doesn't have to be the best player in that position. It's how you want to see it, how you want to view it, people that matter to you the most. So Holly's Hybrid Reds, a fantastic Forest team? Okay, right. We need to move ourselves on. So that means that it's time for this.
The lightning round!
Yes, the lightning round. So I don't know if you're a Friends fan, Holly. So if you're not, I apologize, but this definitely comes straight from that. We're unashamedly big Friends fans on this podcast. So I think most of the folks who've come on have been fans as well. So, but
Definitely
yeah,
partial to friends for sure.
excellent, excellent. Yeah. So first question. So we just rattle through these questions. Give us your answers as quickly as possible. Some of these we probably already figured out, but we'll go with the first one. What was your first Forest match live?
Now, this is a difficult question for me, and I'll keep it really quick. I don't actually remember who it was against, but it was around 90. I think it was about 92. I used to go to what was Forest soccer schools, and we had a match at the end of the soccer school that we were allowed to go to. And I don't know why, but I can't remember who we actually played, but I know we won. And that's all I've got really, which is really weird because most people remember their first game, right? But
Sorry.
No, that's all right. No, that's okay. I love the cheese trader. So thanks for throwing that up there. Favorite Forest player of all time? I think we already know the answer to this one, but that's okay. We'll throw it out there anyway.
yeah, Mr. Stuart Pearce has to be.
Amazing. What player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
Ooh,
Women's or men's?
that's a really good question. It's got to be quickfire as well, hasn't it? In the current squad. You know what? Actually, it's quite a recent one. I would say I'd love to see Bruce Samba back in goal.
I would agree with that 100%.
Missed the trick,
Especially
letting him
right
go.
now.
Yeah,
100%.
sure.
Yeah. Great call out. All right. Your favorite away or third kit?
Ooh. Yeah, it's got to be the yellow vomit kit from the 90s.
Is that the one behind it right here?
That's the one, yeah. The one where Umbo's got wrong. Yeah, that one.
That's right. Yeah. Excellent. That was a great gift from Greg. So thank you, Greg, for the vomit kit. That was amazing. Yeah. No, it's a great choice. Amazing. What is your favorite Forest memory or moment?
Ooh.
I think you touched on it earlier, but
I mean, in terms, it's really tricky, isn't it? But I would say, I mean, for me, it's either going to be watching the Littlewoods Cup in '89, which got me into Forest, or it's got to be with the promotion. It's got to be promotion at Wembley.
yeah.
Most recently, has to be just
Yeah.
just for the occasion and the day and what it meant. I mean, it was one of the best days in my life, as I'm sure it was for all of us. So
Absolutely.
that's got to
No,
be
those
up
are
there.
both
Unfortunately,
great.
I never went to any of the cup finals at Wembley. So
Brilliant. All right. If you weren't a Forest fan, what club would you support?
I like that question. It's a really good question. So as I said earlier, my dad was West Ham. My mum and my grandpa were Grimsby. I currently live about 15 minutes from the Emirates, and I do go quite a lot to watch the Arsenal women as well, because it's just a great spectacle. But oh gosh, I guess it probably would be West Ham because of my dad and all my dad's side of the family that were all West Ham fans.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to stick with the family connection, right? It's great.
Yeah.
Apart from Cluffy or Cooper, who was your favorite Forest manager?
Oh gosh.
Charlie Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Andy Cook was really good as well, by the way. He was a really, really good manager. Oh, that's a really good one. I think it's either going to be Frank Clark, Paul Hart. I loved Sabri Limucci. I would have loved to have gone up under Sabri Limucci. He's just a really classy guy, wasn't he? Something about him. Do you know what? I'm probably going to go with Frank Clark actually, just for what he did in one season to get us promoted back up again, and then finishing third. I mean, it was fantastic, and the fact that he was part of the Miracle Men as well, I thought was really, really nice. So
Yeah,
probably
it's a great choice. Can't go wrong with that one. If Forest could sign one player from a non-top six side, who would it be? Again, women or men's. I think it'd be interesting to hear.
Oh, where's someone but from non-top six side? Who would it be? That's a really good question. I'm just trying to think who I like. I know who I know who I would want for the women. I don't know whether you guys know this person, but there's a female player who plays for the London City Lionesses called Rusha Littlejohn. She's actually I know she's friends with Carly, and she's a real character. She's got her own YouTube channel, and I think she would add, as well as being a fantastic player, she'd add a real sort of comedic edge to Forest as well. She's a real character. I love, as I said before, I love characters in football. So I'd love for Forest to sign her. She's coming to the end of her career as well, so I wonder whether we maybe get her on loan. But in terms of the men, on toxic side, I'm just trying to think. That's a really good question. Got to be a striker, right? Surely.
You've got Wolves, I think, of Brentford, Southampton, those kind
Yeah.
of non-top. Everton, I suppose, maybe.
Yeah, Leicester, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. Oh, you really put me on the spot with that one.
It's hard. It's a tough one for sure.
It is a tough one.
No worries. Yeah, if you can't answer it, no, it's no worries. Yeah, I think I'd go Cunha. I think now that you bring up striker, I think that would be a good one.
Mbeumo, someone like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Who would you rather sell first, Murillo or Morgan Gibbs-White?
See, that's quite easy. We've had that discussion amongst friends. Murillo for me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both fantastic players, but I think Morgan he's our talisman, isn't he now? So yeah,
100%.
I think it would have to be Murillo.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Forest win the Premier League, but are then relegated into the Championship for the next 25 years. Would you take it?
No.
I don't think anyone said yes. Yeah, exactly. We need to move on from this question, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hideous to get out of, 23 years in the doldrums. So no thanks.
Or maybe 25 years is too long. Would you take 10 years?
Maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe not.
That's really
Yeah.
No.
Well done. Excellent lightning round. Thank you so much, Holly. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, we are nearly out of time, but I want to quickly squeeze in this. So if you are listening, there's the music coming your way, and for those watching, it's just gone past dinner time. I hope you're not hungry. So yes, that's the cheese trader, Stu Freestone. He promotes and follows the podcast in his shop. He's got a lovely picture of Talking Reds. He's our sponsor. He's a Forest fan, as I say. Please do support him. If you like some specialty cheeses, he's based in York. You can walk in through the door as Richard did himself a couple of weeks ago. You can quote Talking Reds when ordering via email, phone or Instagram. You get 10% off every single time. I've put all the details in the bio. So if you want to contact Stu Freestone and get some cheese, then please do so without delay. Right at the end of the pod, I want to spend just a couple of minutes just to round things off, just switching things over to the men's team. We are now at 20 minutes to 2. In just a couple of hours, we're going to be kicking off Holly against Liverpool. Thoughts on what the lineup might be? Well, who would you like to see play? How do you think the game's going to go today at Anfield, Holly?
Well, goes without saying, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. We've not won there, have we, since 1969, which is absolutely mad. I think winning at Anfield has to be on most Forest fans' bucket list, right? So, yeah, a real test. The real test of Murillo and Milenkovic's partnership, I think. I would really like to see Jota starting, personally. I thought he had a wonderful game. Him and Sousa. Yeah, against Newcastle. That's what was really disappointing for me, was that
my latest man crush.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What a boy. Yeah, great game. I thought they had a fantastic game against Newcastle, and the team as a whole had a fantastic game against Newcastle. And it was really a little bit disappointing that we didn't really carry that on into Wolves. And I would have liked to have seen him start. So, yeah, Jota for me. I think again it's going to be a big marker for where we are. It is a shame that we couldn't get more out of Wolves and Bournemouth at home, because these next two games are going to be absolutely massive, aren't they? They're huge games that are going to be a real test, and very, very, very testing for where we are. So, yeah, I'd bite your hand off, rip your hand off for a point right now. I'd love to see sort of like a year-on-year improvement, and actually pick up a draw, because obviously we've not won there for the last two seasons. So, but why not now? Why not now?
Why
Exactly.
not? Yesterday we were on with Danscape, and we have put out the Liverpool preview where Richard and I and Dan gave our thoughts on formation and who we'd like to see play. Do you think maybe a back three today might be the way to go, Holly?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I trust Nuno. I think he's going to be very, very well drilled for this game. And what was the quote that he said before in his pre-match, that it doesn't matter who's in front of you, something along those lines, we'll be ready, kind of thing. And yeah, we might be pleasantly surprised today. I'm optimistic, strangely optimistic.
Well, we can only be optimistic. And that brings us to the end of this episode with Holly from Forest Women Fancast. The hour or so has flown. I think we could probably sit and chat. I've got a load of questions that I actually didn't get through. So you're going to have to come back on again. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come back. You're going to have to come back on again at some point. So we hope you will come back on again. But no, it's been an absolute delight to have you with us. Can't thank you enough. Richard, anything you want to add before we go?
No, it's been a pleasure. I'm in accord with Greg. The quality of your podcast is amazing. It can't be understated. It's incredible, and so I really appreciate all the hard work you guys put into it. And I agree with him 100% too. I learned so much in listening to those 5 episodes, and I think what you're trying to do, you're making it happen. So we just need to get more people on board and to hear it and to be participants in it, because it's brilliant. Thank you. You and Ollie both have done an amazing job. So thanks for coming on.
And
Thank you so much.
before I hand over to you, Holly, for anything you want to say, Ollie, I know you're in the comments, and we were hoping you'd come on as well. But next time, we really want to see you come on with Holly as well, because you're the stat man for Forest Women's Fancast. You're the man with all the knowledge, so we need you on the podcast as well. But Holly, before we sign off, I want to give you a chance to say anything you'd like to wrap things up, anything you want to promote, anything you want to say about the Fancast. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so big up to Ollie. We wouldn't be the cast that we are without him. So thank you so much, Ollie, for all your help and all your stats, Mr. Statman. Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks so much. I mean, that means the world. We're doing what we set out to do. So I love that you love the pod. I mean, this is the first time that I've ever ventured into doing my own pod. First time I've ever ventured into hosting a pod. It's absolutely terrifying.
You do it really well.
Yes,
I was saying to Richard before you come on, you do
Absolutely.
a really
Oh my
good
gosh.
job. Genuinely,
God bless you.
you do.
That means a lot. That really means a lot. Thank you. Big up to our producer Nick, who produces all the pods as well. She's my partner, and she's wonderful. She's really, really talented, and she puts a lot of hard work into to all the editing and all the sound and everything. So big up to her. And yeah, come and follow us, Forest Women Cast on Twitter. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Pods and all that kind of thing, the usual places that you get your podcasts. Please give us a review, give us a like, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, just come and have a listen and get along to the City Ground, because you're really going to enjoy it. You're going to see some entertaining football. So yeah, just do it. And thank you so much for your support, guys. Really, really appreciate it. And it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you as well, and give us a platform. So thank you. Much appreciated.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Our pleasure. So that is the end of this one. If you can like and subscribe our video, that would be great as well, because those clicks really help get our numbers up. Go and like and subscribe and listen to the Forest Women Fancast. If you haven't checked it out already, then give it a go, because I tell you something, it's really good, it's snappy, it's informative, and it's Forest. And that's really all you need to know. Thanks for joining us. This has been the one with Holly from Forest Women Fancast. We'll see you next time.